Hey, Paradox for JuanSource.com, and I'm going to be doing something new today for you guys. I'm going to be doing an article on choke points. Okay, so video article today on choke points, and I'm going to be doing train today specifically. If you guys do like this, if you guys think the it's a good bit of content, it's a good idea, to go over these things, and you guys like what I discussed today, maybe we'll go over further maps, more maps, and you guys can give your feedback there and see whatever map you want to do next. So anyway, talking about choke points, really every map, at least one or two big choke points on the map that can affect a lot of strategy on the map, so, and kind of how the CTs are going to end up playing. So I'm going to be mainly looking at the T-side perspective, the terror side perspective of choke points, and maybe give a little bit of the counter perspective too for you guys as well. So starting out on train, two real major choke points that I identify on this map. The number one here is going to be alley. All right, and alley, back in my day when I played really competitively and played with Pandemic and Verge and even Optics, this is my way to go. Whenever we'd play train, I'd love working alley, because this is I believe to be a big advantage for the T's, especially picking off down this alley. I think the T's have a big advantage down here, being able to control this choke point, and also the implications it'll have, whether or not the CTs really try to contest. At that point, you should be at the advantage, and you should be able to utilize either peeker advantage with the op, or maybe utilize a flash or a couple nades or something like that, and either get the entry kill, in which case your outside take becomes a lot easier, or you could push them off. And a lot of teams, especially teams that are used to controlling alley, get really uncomfortable. Teams that play more passive may get a little bit monotone, and you may be able to play a little bit more comfortably against teams who are forced to play more passive. Even if they're used to it, it won't really make a difference. So having a really good alley take and controlling this choke point is going to be a big key to this map. I think the number one key to train is going to be this alley control on T side. Likewise on CT side, if you could hold alley, your outside hold is going to be that much better, and pretty much going to lock down the map pretty solid. So really getting into it for alley, as far as taking alley, how you want to go about that. Typically I'd send two players here. Alright, pretty standard basic two-player take on alley. Maybe one op, one AK is really a good way to go. Pistol rounds, if you do want to work it that way, maybe have a USP or a deagle and maybe try to get the long range shot or something like that. A pretty good choke point to work on pistol round, alley and maybe over at middle as well. Kind of split on the two and see what happens there. But for the gun round, most rounds you're gonna encounter really op, AK, good way to go. My preferred method, if you watch a few demos from back in the day, of either Pandemic or Verge or something like that on train, they really weren't, train wasn't necessarily our best map from back then, but even then I felt like our alley take was really good, and either Griff and I would take it with Pandemic. We had a really high success rate. I haven't really, it's not to be arrogant or anything like that, but I haven't really watched any other teams, or when I personally played alley, I didn't really see too much that stood out to me as far as competitive teams that took alley. I didn't really see anything specific, so that's just kind of my example. And really the system that we had was to work usually an AK and an op. Alright, that's kind of the basic pace, like I said, and sometimes I'd go for the pick, and this is a point where the opper really has to be able to utilize peeker advantage, where you just want to be able to out-peek the corners, out-peek the angles, and utilize your reflex. There's no substitute for that skill. If you're not able to master this angle, alright, and get that pick down with op, then it's going to take away from your alley take. You know, you're not going to have as many options. You're not going to be able to be as aggressive and impose your will as much as you otherwise would be able to. So usually what will happen, ideally if another Opper or maybe a Coulter's peeking down, normally I'd peek the first angle, maybe, you know, always check this little pillar. Some players like playing to the side of each pillar and kind of work it a little bit systematically. At the same time, work it relatively fast. You know, nothing at the first angle. Move over, maybe peek the barrel, peek the right side with the op, and also look. Really important to kind of try to look through these barrels. See if I could maybe get myself an op here. And the magic happens. Okay, so yeah, pretty much maybe looking through these barrels a little bit, you know, get a good sense of that, and work side to side. And at this point, really the only thing that could bother you here, one of two things really, is going to be an Opper that randomly peeks or peeks a random angle. And you know, once again, if you saw me ever play CT alley, I like to do a lot of this kind of stuff where I'd peek maybe a random angle with Op or something like that. Because at this point you could kind of see flashbangs coming in as they come. You could turn from them, and most of the time players will move up at that point. You could re-peek and catch people off guard. So you know, if you're good at doing that, that's a good way to counteract that as CT. Really the only thing you're going to run into is a bad timing. You know, say you kind of peek here and you say, oh, nothing at the angle, you move over and then that Opper peeks you. That's really the only problem you could run into, but that's really uncommon timing, and it could work against that CT Opper just as well. So, you know, it's kind of hit or miss there. If they're playing a gamble like that, you know, you could always try to take that. You could go 50-50 and go for a pick-off, and in a 4-on-4, you'll usually gain an advantage anyway. So yeah, that's as far as that goes. The other thing that I've seen a few teams implementing now in this alley, well, one thing that's been kind of popular has been smoking the barrels here, and another thing has been double smoking alley early on. So maybe double smoking deep down the alley, or even double smoking the barrels, preventing any sort of early alley rush or something like that. So you know, that's another thing you may run into. At this point, you may want to switch up your strategy a little bit, maybe implement some more grenade work and things of that sort. I do recommend getting between these two players getting a nade pattern down. You know, sometimes you want to pick, sometimes maybe you don't have money for ops, or you just want to dual AK it. In this case, a good flash to do would be something like that, maybe off the pillar here. You could also, and I've seen this be really effective, you could coordinate double nades off that to get people playing off of that barrel, and that's just brutal at that point. If you could get those off, if anybody's playing here, that's pretty much just you know, the end of that. It's going to be the end of that player right there. So pretty much what you want to do. Don't really have to use my system. Don't have to adhere to anything of that sort. But I do recommend, if you're going to have a systematic take, set up sort of a little bit of a system, you know, and you could even call this earlier on, okay, I'm going to pick, and this is kind of how I work things too back in the day. I'd take the lead and say, okay, I'm going to pick this round, or okay, let's do a pattern, and that's really all I had to say, instead of saying, you know, oh, let's do flash now and this and that. Sometimes it's good to adjust like that, but having a base pattern to work off of and even to adjust is good. You know, if you don't have anything to adjust, how can you adjust it, right? So just a little perspective on that and taking alley. At this point too, you know, if they do smokes, or if you have AKs, you could even smoke up your side of alley, however you want to take it. So find a system that works and go from there. At this point, really what you want to do, if you do get the pick off, you really want to just execute your outside take as soon as possible. If not, if they're playing more passive, having two smokes at this point is going to be really key. And most of the time what you want to do is take the front, you know, wrap over to the front side, and this is how you really want to utilize this choke point of alley, is to try to work over towards this right side of the map, because this is going to apply a ton of pressure to anybody trying to cover middle, cover alley, cover ladder rather, sorry. So really what you can do from here is to double smoke the left side. Alright, or if you have a single smoke, you could single smoke and then maybe toss a flash through it, make sure nobody's creeping up and work through that way. Otherwise, you do want to double smoke that left side. Once again, you do want to work it pretty systematically, in the point that once you establish control of this alley here, you want to smoke that up pretty quickly. Maybe even, you know, of course, clear your corners and clear around the barrels and your corners and all that. Maybe even do a flash shot here, or maybe one out to the side there. However you want to work it. I don't recommend stalling too far here after those double smokes go up. I like just doing a safety flash to the side here, so I don't even have to worry about that left side, and come out and do a pretty systematic take on the outside. You know, once you come out this alley, you can clear the tower, help the ladder players, help the front yard players out, and at this point, you trap anybody playing close. All right, you trap anybody playing, you know, say the 5 hitch or something like this, or playing close on the ladder. You could maybe work a guy out middle, but in any case, you apply a ton of pressure on players maybe trying to cover this middle close. You know, you make them hide a little bit more. They don't have as much freedom. And now these guys may have to look off or hide a little bit. And if they're playing, say, one ladder and one mid, these guys are going to have a lot of trouble holding, because now they have to watch their backs, and maybe this middle guy lets somebody get out middle, and that middle guy kills the ladder guy. It just causes a whole lot of chaos and forces the other team to really adapt and communicate a lot. So I think that's a good way to go for the most part with alley. And once you do establish control, you know, you could even get a little bit monotone with this on the T side. You know, you could do this take over and over and over again, double smoking that left side, and as long as your timing's good. Some teams, you know, they may adjust, maybe trying to counter flash alley or trying to counter peek it. Say guy from 6 lane comes over and tries to re-peek and flash and all that stuff. At this point, your communication really becomes key, where if you notice a change in the defense like that, you want to communicate to the mid guys and have a sense of urgency, or to the ladder guys to get out to the front yard and try to pick down your alley lane down here, you know, and help you out that way. So once again, this also, those double smokes eliminate the 6 lane here from an opping down middle, and it makes it a lot easier for your oppers coming out mid and ladder to eliminate that 6 lane, and now usually they only have to look bomb train or 5 lane. Maybe they could even toss the smoke towards 5 lane or something like that. You know, that's more going into strategy articles. I want to kind of keep focused on the choke point idea here, but you sort of get the point, you know, where applying this choke point will kind of break down the defense systematically. So really, that's my recommendation for you. Really, something to do off of controlling alley, controlling this choke point. So that's the T-side perspective. Once again, set up sort of a systematic take, either op, pick. You should really have a good deal of peeker advantage here, and as long as you don't run into, say, you know, double smokes early on or smoke at the barrel, should be pretty straightforward as far as taking goes. You know, have an op back, have an AK work up, and go from there. You know, and either do a 2-1-2 split or 2-2-1, however you want to do it. Maybe even go heavy alley with 3 guys. That's that. Alright, so that's the first choke point I want to talk about. That's alley, and probably, you know, definitely number 1 on this map. Probably number 1, just, you know, probably in the top 3 choke points in the entire game. Putting every map together, alley on train is just crucial. So that's definitely one I wanted to spend a little bit of time on. The second choke point I'm going to talk about, and this is going to be the main secondary choke point on train, is going to be this, what I'm going to call the U-Haul. Okay, this is you know, like U-Haul trucks. But yeah, the U-Haul is pretty much from here over to here, over to this upper. So that you can see kind of I ran in a U shape, and that's why I call it U-Haul. So if you guys are looking for a name for this area of the map, there you go. Alright, courtesy Paradox. So anyway, really what you want to do as far as this goes, especially, and this kind of works into the alley choke point too, if a team is putting a lot of pressure on alley early round, you know, a CT team is double smoking or smoking off early, especially with this long round time now, with the league rule set with a 145 round time, you really want to have something to do in the meantime. Even if you want to take alley, sometimes it's a better idea to wait for those smokes to dissipate and kind of let the defense reset a little bit. So even on the outside take, this, you know, especially in that case that the alley choke point is kind of bogged down for, say, the first 30-35 seconds of the round, this really just gives you something to do, if nothing else. Also becomes pretty effective for any outside take or inside take altogether. So I think on most rounds, unless you're doing a full-out rush, it's a pretty good idea to try to take control of this U-Haul. And if nothing else, just make teams worry about a possible inside take. That's really what I tend to see from a lot of teams. If you do take this U-Haul, you know, they'll either shift an opper from Z to inner. You really got to understand the implications of doing something like this. So that's that. And really what will normally happen, especially if you're having trouble with an outside take, having, you know, you see maybe 4 players playing outside and opper Z, and say a guy close middle, a guy close close on the ladder train, and guy alley, maybe a floater over here in mid. Pretty common way that teams play on train. Normally what'll happen if something like that's going on, especially if they have a spotter, and if you know this is an even bigger advantage, if you know people are spawning feed, or if you could sell a little bit of a fake and make them worry, then that opper from middle is going to shift. And this is a really kind of really close and really intricate timing that you have here, you know, to move this opper off, okay, and work into a possible outside take against 3 people. This is where a lot of teams tend to break down, especially teams that love playing close. If you could maybe simultaneously hit, you know, do that alley control and inner control, or make them worry about that U-Haul inner, you may be able to confuse this opper over at Z and maybe make him shift towards inner, and at the same time you're already set up for your alley take, and now you could execute, you know, maybe a little bit delayed at the ladder, but you could execute a pretty solid outside take and shift the defense to a 3-2 instead of a 4-1. So this is a pretty good way to go. You know, if usually the implication that you have from taking control here, that's I'd say about 50 to 60% of the time what'll happen on gun rounds is exactly that, what I just described. So the other cases, teams may be playing 2 committed inner, or they may be playing just 1 opper in the back of inner, not really spotting U-Haul at all. I think that's a good point to hit inner. If they're playing 4 outside and 1 passive inner, you really just have to have a systematic inner take, or you have to be a little more aggressive with your fake to make them shift a little bit more. Now, teams that play more passive are going to be more aggressive to rotate, because they're not going to have that. They're going to have to guess more. They're not going to have as much recon and not as much knowledge of what's happening exactly over here if you're setting up for a take or if you're faking it. So most of the time teams will give you the benefit of the doubt, especially if you're really forceful with your fake, and sell a pretty heavy rotation if they're playing, you know, really passively on this bomb site. So on the inner bomb site rather. So as far as the control of U-Haul goes, pretty straightforward, I'd say. You could do it with, you know, sometimes 1 player, sometimes 2. Really depends how the other team plays. Once again, you know, no surprises for the most part. Usually maybe send an opper down here to spot the upper, or or pick that upper. You definitely want to make teams uncomfortable from picking. Okay, you want to associate some risk with the CTs trying to peek down and trying to really control this U-Haul, because some teams like to do that. When I personally played inner, and I'd play inner solo, sometimes I'd like to switch it up and maybe op upper or maybe random peek upper and maybe get a little reconnaissance before I fell back into the bomb site to get a better idea of what was going on instead of playing completely passive. So it did give me a lot of variety to do something like that. But then again, a lot of teams didn't punish that, and the hardest teams I ever had to play really gave me a hard time over in this U-Haul. You know, trying to peek down, or they just put a lot of consequence and a lot of risk to trying to play more aggressively here, and even not to get a frag, even to get some information from them. So that's definitely a good way to go. Just you definitely want to implement some sort of consequence. Give them the consequences for trying to take from you. Trying to take that control, take that info, and give them nothing. All right, and give them the consequences for that. So definitely sending that op over to that upper side, maybe having an upper pick over here is a good way to go. Pick that upper. So of course, have your peeker advantage down. Source really good with peeker advantage. So a good way to go, and maybe even have this op covered in the case some teams like to random peek, either Colt or op. Definitely want to be careful for that, and give the benefit of the doubt maybe the first couple rounds, and take it systematically this way to make sure you don't get entry killed. So I'd say the first few rounds, before you get a feel for how they play, maybe have an op this way and have an AK. Maybe you can run across, you could jump across. It really depends on what you're trying to do. Sometimes people will hear you, and once again, you don't really mind that, because if you do this a lot, if you take control of U-Haul a lot, both on your inner takes and on your outside takes, the other team, the CTs, the defending team's not going to be able to predict you as well. So, kind of utilize the system that way, and have the common sense about that. Oh, we're only going to do this on inner takes. Well, then maybe you want to be a little more, maybe try to be a little more sneaky and maybe jump across or find a way to get across without them knowing. Now, if you're going to do this a lot of the rounds, which I do recommend, then it may even be desirable for you to try to maybe make some sort of presence here too. Now, once again, remember the timing. If you are going to do an inner hit and you start taking control of U-Haul, remember that timing from that inner guy, okay? Usually what will happen is there's kind of a window of time where that opper will move over, especially if somebody's spotting, and that usually happens immediately, okay? Either immediately or when you start your nade pattern. So say you do a smoke or something like that, that opper will move over at that point, okay? Most of the time that's what happens. So kind of a safe assumption there. So really depends how you want to go. Once again, have that opper posted up, maybe have the AK lead around the corners. Be careful. Always be careful of all your angles. You do want to be aware of maybe somebody off in a random angle or something really goofy here. Expect unexpected. So taking control. And at this point, once again, it really depends on your strat from here, what you want to do. You could do, great smoke to do something like that. Just smoke off that upper, make that Z guy worry about that upper. You could come in, maybe toss a flashbang into the back of the site, some of that sort, and really sell a fake. Even sometimes with one guy, sell a good bit of a fake. And even if you really want to commit to this fake, you could even do a sort of nade pattern down there and maybe try to drop this guy into the bomb site, or even maybe even run him over the upper side and hope maybe catch this upper off guard and get a good shot on him, get a pick there. So it really depends which way you want to go with this. Either way, if you do an outside take, you could do that fake, or you could fall back both people to inner. Another cool idea too is to mask your movement with your grenades, with your flashes, with your smokes. Even maybe you want to toss a grenade down. If there's anybody that could possibly hear you, that grenade will deafen them, and then you could run back to ladder, and those guys can't really make that call at that point. So You know, just kind of a little cool idea there, but definitely something worth mentioning. So besides that, besides kind of the more specific things, not too much to it. Eventually, once you figure out sort of how the defense likes to play, maybe they like to play more passive inner, or maybe they like to peek down. Maybe you could even send one guy here. Really depends how you want to do it, but definitely controlling this backhaul, and if nothing else, making them worry will be a great benefit, not only for inner takes but for outside takes. For inner takes, the implication is that once you do this a few times and then go outside and go inside, and you vary your strategy off the same you know, say the same markers or the same tells, as I call them. You know, say you have an inner strat that you do an upper smoke, but you don't end up going inner whenever you do that smoke. Now the team can't predict you as much. And you know, if you're going to be monotone with that, and if you're going to go inner every time you did that smoke, now the team can just pre-rotate and say, hey, they're going to go inner, so let's pre-rotate. And in the case of Pandemic, you'd rotate 3 guys inner and still lose the bomb site. So, I mean, it just kind of depends on your competence on train there, but you know, just kind of getting back to the focal point. Really just utilize, if for nothing else, for unpredictability. Alright, control point for the sake of the other team, not for the defenders not being able to predict you. So not really too much of a system besides that. I don't really want to get too much into the strategy of taking inner bomb site or anything like that. Just more theoretical ideas on the 2 choke points. So besides that, you know, you could argue that ladder's you know, really anything's a choke point. You have middle, you have ladder, anything you could control that way. But for true choke points, something that you could control that's not a bomb site. You know, we talk about control all the time, and ideally you want to take control of the bomb site and plant the bomb and gain the advantage. Controlling choke points can be a key factor in taking those bomb sites. You know, it's kind of your stepping stone. You know, you go from, usually either you'll go from straight in the round to rushing the bomb site, taking control, or you go from systematically working your way into the bomb site. And this is more for kind of that systematic, you know, take control, maybe make the team adjust their defense a little bit. Of course, a team wants to have 4 guys. Whenever you go outside, they want to have 4 guys outside, the CTs do. When you go inner, they want to have 2 or 3 guys inner, you know, and I mean, the numbers run out at some point. You know, if you have 4 guys outside, you have 1 guy inside. If you have 2 or 3 inner, you have, you know, 3 or 2 outer, which is not ideal from a defensive standpoint. So using these control points and these choke points is going to allow you to maneuver the defense, really, just to maneuver the defense the way you want to. And if they don't maneuver, say, you know, you do a little bit of an inside fake, they still have 4 outer, there you go. There's your answer. You know, you go inside, and that's your weak point. So, so even the choke points can be good in determining what bomb site you want to hit. You know, maybe you want to hit inner. You know, they're playing 1 inner, or they're playing 3 outer. Maybe you want to go outer now. So that's pretty much that. Also, you know, kind of the last thing I do want to touch on. I'm gonna finish up here. Don't want to spend more time than I need to. Don't want to overcomplicate things, but do think about the synergistic effect that these choke points have on the other choke point. I mean, if you take alley and you take a lot of control of alley, you may have an easier time taking control inner, in the sense that if you put a lot of pressure there, sometimes the result may be that a player will push up inner, and you may just be waiting for him, and boom, pick him off, get a solid inner taker, at least gain the advantage, spread the defense out a little bit. Or, you know, you'll rotate that Z opper, that middle opper, and maybe rotate the second player off the inner bomb site onto outer, maybe have that guy anticipate an outer hit. So, you know, there's a lot of guesswork involved usually on CT. You know, teams trying to optimize and all that. So once again, you do want to utilize that, and the synergy of inside to alley. You know, if you do this constantly and you make the team worry about an inside take every single round, you do enhance your inside take, but you also enhance your outside take, because now you could, the other team's going to be more likely to guess wrong. Number one, to take more risks and take more guesses, and number two, to make more mistakes that way, just to guess wrong, because you could sort of anticipate what they're going to do, and once you get a good sense for that, you got them. Alright, and that's where your 8-7 T-side or your 10-5 T-side on this map comes to play, is really manipulating the choke points, manipulating the mindset of the defense and what they're going to do and how they're going to respond. So once you could get in their minds and predict what they're going to try to predict, and kind of step ahead of them, and a bit of the meta game right there, and kind of the mind game as far as strategy goes, a little bit complex, but breaking down into these choke points, these are really two simple things you could do. Taking control of the U-Haul, taking control of the alley. Two simple things you could do to really give yourself an edge and give yourself a much easier time in outguessing the defense and creating a easier situation for taking a bomb site. So besides that, it's pretty much going to be it as far as choke points go. So train, going to keep it simple. Of course, your alley and your inner. As far as kind of the CT perspective, do you want to touch base on that a little bit? I think the best thing to do to sort of counteract that is to, once again, the idea of consequences comes in, and at some point you have to put your foot down and you have to say, you know what, you're not going to do this. You're not going to send one or two guys here to fake and sell your little silly fairy tale about what you're doing and what you're not doing. So lay traps. I mean, if you see teams doing this, and if you see maybe one guy working slowly upper, you may want to take that gamble and maybe set up this op right here around this angle. And I would even do this when I played inner, something really uncommon and really unexpected. I'd do something like this, knowing that maybe one guy's going to come over here and pick him off, and now nobody's here to trade, and I could just fall back and have a good old time back in this bomb site now and play a 5-on-4. So, once again, the CTs, I think the response here is going to be to try to impose your will a bit. Maybe play 2 inner and say, you know what, you're not going to control this. If you want to control this, you're going to send. You're going to send your manpower over here, and you're going to fight for it. You're going to fight for those picks. Maybe, counteract that spreading of the map with maybe taking a little risk and forcing 2-on-1, even 1-on-1 fights that are favorable to you based on position. Sometimes I'd even set up an op here and wait for a guy to run up or something like that, knowing that I could just fall back or whatever, get that entry pick and fall back, and at this point the other team is spreading the map, trying to take control. Now they lose a guy, and they lose a big ability to take that control. So control is all about manpower, control is all about spreading the map. If nothing else, if you're having a really hard time, the way to go may be to just get in their faces and let them know, we're going to fight for this, we're going to fight for U-Haul, we're going to fight for every inch, don't fight, live and die for that inch, or whatever the quote is from Any Given Sunday, Al Pacino. Can't really recall it right now, so you kind of get the idea there. So as far as alley goes, one of the things that I've seen, one of the hardest things I've had to deal with trying to take alley from a T perspective is teams that shut down alley early on. Okay, and how you do that is, a great way to go is either double smoke or you smoke the barrel. Okay, you have a secondary player smoke the barrel, or maybe smoke close here, and then you could have an op back here, or sometimes maybe you could play the barrel, or sometimes you could double up if you want to. But if nothing else, have a secondary player come over here, do a smoke, and then the alley player can just drop his smoke after that first smoke dissipates. Runs a lot of time off the clock. So that's a good way to go. And once again, if nothing else, you kind of have to impose your will, and maybe, give them the unexpected sometimes, especially on a map like Train. This map, giving them the unexpected is is a great way to go sometimes. If you could catch them off guard and say, hey, they're taking alley relatively quickly, and they're not really watching for pushes, or I think I could catch them off guard. Hey, do a double alley push, man. Why not? Do a double alley push and maybe fight these 1 or 2 guys right here. You could even catch somebody with peeker advantage over in this cubby or something like that, commonplace that people play, or peek down with an op and maybe catch an AKer. Usually on a gun round, you're not going to catch an opper sitting somewhere back here. Normally they'll be closer up, maybe starting their take, and boom, you'd have an opper or 2 Coulters just come out here, and you give them hell really for that fact and matter. Just make them, the more you give them to worry about, the slower they're going to be, the longer they're going to take control, and the more time you run off the clock, the less options the T's are going to have, and the more you're going to be able to predict where they're going to go. Because if at 45 seconds you have 1 or 2 guys faking alley, that's and the T's want to end up going inner. That's either 1 or 2 guys that aren't going to go inner, or that's 1 or 2 guys that are going to be really late to inner, or that inner take's going to be at about 20 seconds in the round, with 20 seconds left in the round rather. So just kind of perspective from the CT side, what you can do to counteract this sort of control. Definitely don't want to get too monotone. Don't want to play a certain way and let the other team run over you. Give them, if something's working for them and something's not working for you, you have to change that, especially round after round, even if that takes drastic measures. And I really haven't seen a lot of this in CS, but if you're having trouble holding alley and you've lost 4 or 5 rounds in a row, next round, send 3 guys to alley and tell them you're not going to continue doing this, and test me again. And if they do, send 3 alley again, and just say, hey, you're not gonna win on one strat alone. So, just a little bit of perspective, kind of going outside choke points too, and just a little maybe more general ideas. But it's all knowledge, and knowledge is power. So anyway, that's kind of the point I want to wrap it up in. And once again, if you guys found this helpful, if you guys like this article, and like what I talked about, choke points, really big strategic aspect of the game, and really a good setup for your strats. I think understanding what choke points are crucial to take, how to take them, and what implications they give you. What implications result from that. I think that's a key to successful strategies, successful T side, and also on the other hand, successful CT side too. If you could take that away, if you could control the choke points as a CT, definitely will improve your defense. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up on that note, guys. Definitely let me know if you want me to do another map. I may do it anyway, so we'll see about that. But I guess until next time, so it's been a pleasure, and I'll see you guys later. Paradox from JuanSource.com. See you guys later.